This message is brought to you by Spirion. The data privacy revolution is the new age of protecting what matters most. Automatically and persistently discover and classify sensitive data with the most accurate solution on the planet. Understand the data within the context of your business and then take actions to control that data so you can operate with minimal friction and comply with the laws and regulations built to protect the personal data privacy of individuals across the globe. This is Spirion, protecting what matters most. Visit them on the web at securityweekly.com/Spirion. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I'm excited about this segment because our good friend Gabriel Gumbs is here with us. He's the VP of Product Management at Spirion, but that doesn't quite... I mean, that's just such a small part.
At Spirion.
I'm sorry, our notes are out of date.
No, they shouldn't have been. Sam confirmed them.
Oh, yeah, well.
Well, I was looking...
Welcome to RSA.
I'm just messing with. But
So your title is what then? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Chief Innovation Officer.
Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's still just a small part of who Gabriel Gumbs really is. We love hanging out.
It doesn't define me as a person.
Fashionista.
Wow. I appreciate that. Wear my Spirion socks, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I should have stopped by the booth
we were walking in my other shoes. I got these beautiful blue shoes, and I'm like, I got to be in tennis shoes. My feet just hurt.
These are super comfy, but I know you feel. Like every year at this show, my pedometer just starts, smoke just starts coming out of the sides.
This is day 4, people. We've been walking all over the city.
Yeah. Dogs are barking.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me back.
As you folks can tell, we're very comfortable with Gabe, and we can just come on and just kind of chit-chat. But and we'll definitely do some of that. And so for those that have not heard of Spirion before, I know you came on the show previously, but kind of recap as we see all of the vendors. They're doing all of the things.
It's a lot of vendors. I forgot what the count was, or whatever it was.
614, I think it was. 78 new. But then some pulled out, so I don't know if they counted those 8 or didn't, but that's what I saw.
That still only represents from another number I saw once, something like 10% of all the security companies out there.
It's probably about 20.
Wow.
Maybe 20%.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's like 3,000 cybersecurity companies. Yeah.
That is a large number. But so Spirion,
Spirion is one of them.
Spirion is one of them. We are a data privacy platform organization, right? We focus on a number of areas. We got to start really digging our heels into the discovery and classification problem. Mm-hmm. That's the problem space we lived in for a bit, being able to control and make sure you're in compliance and all those things, move backwards with understanding the data. And in order to gain that understanding, it began with where is it, what is it, so those
so was GDPR kind of a driver initially for the start of the company?
It's a good question. We have been in the discovery and the privacy and the sensitive data space for 15 years.
Wow.
So even though you're going to see lots of folks in this show floor this year talking about it, it's like, we know. We've been there, done that. That's what we've been. We got T-shirts. It says like that's our thing. So yes, well before it was a driver, the founders of the organization really understood that this problem of data being everywhere and people's data, because for them it was a very empathetic moment of this is the data that belongs to you and your family and your colleagues and your communities. And so the original product focused just on PII, literally just on PII. Now it lots of other data types. But to answer your first question more pointedly, is GDPR a driver? GDPR is a significant driver, and not surprisingly, CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act.
Yeah, absolutely.
A ridiculous driver. There's that, for lack of any better word, privacy revolution going on right now, right? Where
it's disappointing to me. I mean, I love that it gets people thinking about it, but I like to go back to so many lessons that we've had when companies and people ask us, like, how do I get started in security when securing our organizations, right? Not your career, but your organization. And we say, one of the fundamental building blocks is to know what you own. And one of those is, like, what kind of data do you have?
Yeah.
How do you classify it? And where is it? And those are in my opinion, and I think many people's opinions in this field, is those are the fundamental building blocks for any type of security program element that you're going to build.
If you went into any organization and told the whoever runs security that you no longer need an asset management platform, you're good. You don't need that. What do you think they'd tell you? Probably tell you you're crazy. Like, of course I need an asset. I need to know where all my assets are.
Right.
So
and
why
data,
don't? So why don't
data
you?
Is
right.
Data
so
is
why
an
don't
asset,
you need to know where all your data is?
Right.
Yeah.
But data is also an asset.
It's probably your most valuable asset.
It is, because
it's what we should protect, which is why I say I wish the driver was that people realize that data is the most important thing. I have to protect it, and that's what drives my security program. Instead, they go, oh, crap, we're going to get fined from GDPR in the state of California, so we better go find our data. I mean, hopefully we all get to the same place.
Right.
But the drivers are just kind of, for
right.
me, it's a little disheartening.
Yeah.
I want people to recognize this problem outside of facing penalties from compliance regulations.
Because at the end of the day, hackers are after your data.
That's what they're
That's
after.
what it is.
That's what they're after.
Right? Like, when I talk to folks, I always talk about app user data, but data's the holy grail. Because if I could protect data, who cares what other security controls I have in place? You can't get to the data.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
that's not to say you
Nirvana
don't need
case.
any of the other controls.
Right.
That's to say having those controls without understanding where the data is, then where did you apply the controls, by the way? I don't know where you applied them.
We applied them everywhere.
Everywhere. Oh, to everything. Got it. So then you just...
That's why we spend $120 billion in security every year, because we put it everywhere.
Everywhere. It's everywhere. Security all the way down. It's for sure, though. And one of the interesting things about what you just said in terms of having those things as a driver, these new regulations in particular, CCPA, GDPR, privacy focused, right? They are purely privacy focused. You can have data security without data privacy, though.
Correct.
And so that's where some folks still have to be careful they're not getting caught up in, well, it's protected. That doesn't mean that you've achieved data privacy, though, right?
That's true.
It certainly doesn't mean that if I, for example, exercised any of the rights under both of those regulations, let's just take, for example, I no longer want you as an organization to share my data with a third party.
Yep.
You may have it super secure, locked down.
Unauthorized access, folks can't access your data. However, I'm contracted with a third party, but I'm giving them permission. I'm authorizing them to access your data.
Data privacy violated.
Right.
Still secure, privacy violated. Like you said.
Right.
Or the right to be not known, right?
Yes.
And now you have to remove it. Well, in order to remove it, you
gotta
better know
Probably,
where it is.
Otherwise, you literally cannot remove
Right,
it.
exactly.
That's the key. It's a fundamental building block. And again, knowing your assets in our world is just a fundamental building block. That's just how that adds up.
And it's interesting too how careful we have to be with even data that we don't believe is very obviously. There's a big difference between my name and my email address and my title and where I work versus my social security number and other more sensitive information pertaining to me, right? But regulations, and I think now people in general, regardless of regulation, are like, I want you to protect even my name, my email, because now there's.
I want you to protect like my buying habits also. I don't want that getting into the
There's
wrong
an
hands.
association, right?
I want you to protect everything you know about me. I want you to protect, because it may not just be those very discrete name, phone number, address. Every company today, it's not fair, really too broad. I don't know any organization that exists just to process data. They process data to exist. That's what it is. And so if you have data on me, whether it's my shopping habits or Uber, I've got my location data, like I want you to protect all of that also.
Yeah.
Not just my credit card number. In fact, Uber, if you mess up protecting my credit card number, it's cool.
okay.
That's cool.
It's cool.
Because I'm not going to get charged.
Not worried about that.
Credit card company takes
my
all
location
care of that.
data, though. I really need you to take very good care of that. Very good care of
By
that.
care of it, it could mean getting rid of it after a certain period of time.
That's exactly
right?
what it does.
Gotta keep it
It
forever.
could mean getting rid of it. And that's a lot of what was introduced with these regulations is the processing of it. If you don't have a business justification for collecting it, then you can't and shouldn't be. And if you no longer have a business justification for processing it, the same thing. Now, there's the obvious exceptions because there's other regulations, some which will override those things, saying you have to keep it, for certain periods of
7 years
sure,
or whatever.
Which all makes perfect sense, absolutely. But if there's no reason to process it, then you should get rid of it.
A lot of these conversations and many that I've had with Gabe, and then also others talking about data privacy and GDPR made me think about some of the data that we collect. Now, it's on a very small scale, right? So if people are listening, like, how does Security Weekly protect our data? Like, it's very narrow scope. We could manage it manually, right? Because it's a small company. It's one data set.
But it's pretty rich data, though, right? You have think about all of the data that you do have. I would know if I call it biometric, although my voice is. So there's that. You've got that for lots of security professionals. If all of those people tomorrow started using their voice to protect their phones or do anything else,
I guess that's pretty interesting.
It is all public. You're not wrong. Well, for some of us it is because some of us speak a lot, but lots of folks don't at all. Your face. Use that to unlock your phone.
Oh, right.
There it is.
Face
voice.
I guess our HD quality might just get us.
All of a sudden, Paul's like, we got to go down to 320p.
But our webcast, like we do some registration, and that's why I kind of was using my name and my email address, and maybe my title, where I work in my region and location is common data that all of us would use to register for a webcast.
Absolutely.
Right? Many people collect this data. We're just one instance of that. Being good citizens in a security company, we want to protect it. And they got into interesting conversations because this one use, like if you think about a large enterprise, they got to do this on scale. That's when you start talking to Gabe and his company about doing it on scale. But I like this as an example because it's like, well, it makes me think about all the things that enterprises should be thinking about, how they think about the data they collect. So I'm like, I need to keep it until someone says, I don't want to be on your list anymore. And that's one really requirement
unsubscribe
of our data.
Right.
And that's independent of GDPR. When GDPR came out and I thought about our data, I'm like, we honor that. Like, guys and gals, if you end up on our list and then you don't want to hear from us anymore,
I'll take you off instantly.
We take you off.
I go in and try to wipe it everywhere.
Right, and we're going to delete that data from our database. That's cool, right?
Maybe you come back later. If you don't have a reason to process it.
Exactly.
Right. Then I don't get in trouble with any of those other.
And in that case, that's consent, right? So, there's a lot more explicitly written now about honoring the consent preferences of
we run into some issues with that because
we do.
We've collected our list over time, and they've companies have gotten much more the third parties that are helping us process our data to send an email to everyone, right, or something like that. They're very stringent about mailing lists over time. I've seen the progression, and I'm like, look. We asked our audience to join our list. They opted in. They've been doing that over time. And we've always gotten their permission. They want to be in our list. If they want to be removed, we've always given them that option. But now if I take that data and I'm like, hey, I want to use your service, they're like, no, like you need to prove that all those people. I'm like, no, like we're nice people.
I can't know when exactly that happened.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, we're in the middle of this right now because we were changing email lists, and it's just
the good news is you guys are, because there are thresholds to how large of an organization you have to be, whether or not you fall in those things. So they're not you don't fall in that range, thankfully. But
we still want to do the right thing.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
We still want to do the right
thing. You
thing.
want to do the right thing for your listers, for your community of people. That's the thing that we need more of, right?
So the other thing that we don't do, which I think is interesting, is we don't cookie our users on our public website. You get cookie pop-ups all the time, right?
Well, I don't.
Well, you probably.
I got like 20 browser extensions that should
but I mean, you go to a website and they're tracking you, right? Because they want to know who you are. Their marketing software is tracking your usage. They cookie you. They're waiting for you to fill out a form. They start filling up their database.
Track you back.
Right. Yeah. But we decided consciously on our public website, we're not going to do that. Our podcast has been based on an anonymous basis, right? Anybody can download our stuff,
right?
So but it creates a very interesting dilemma for us. Is people go, well, how big is your audience? It's hard for me to know. I know how many downloads I have. I know how many subscribers on YouTube. I know how many's on my email list, but I don't know the total numbers because I don't track it, right? Yeah. And so we've tried to stay really, really conscious of that on the public website, so we don't fall into some of those traps and collect data that we don't need to do
report on like unique IP maybe, because
maybe.
I can see how that information is useful for you.
It is,
right.
ultimately for our sponsors actually, but because we want to allow anybody to consume and not have to give us information.
It's a great model.
We don't have it. Now that may change obviously when we move to subscription and people sign up for a webcast. That's a little different. We do have that data. We definitely want to protect that data and allow people, when they don't want an email from us, unsubscribe. Or, I've had people email direct me. I'm like, look, I'm sorry, man. I'm like, I just get rid of it.
But the other thing, and I think we've reached a good point in the conversation where we can talk about how do we control and monitor access to that data, right? Like, let's leave some of the other things behind. I look at that as one thing, like who should have access to that data. Obviously, there's places where you don't want that data to live, but really centers around who.
Also, not just who, but also what. What should have access to that data?
Right. What applications.
Right. Because I know you and I were talking on kind of related topic where you've been building some new tools in the background, orchestrate and automate a number of things. So, especially in the cloud. So now, I don't know, maybe you've got some of those things in a database, in a container. Cloud, and does that container access the database at all? Does it? Right. So now you've got a bunch of things that also have access to that data as well as people. So,
and being able to control that is, to me, super important.
It would be our guest data, right? A guest coming on would come.
Most of that data is public, though. That's why I use the webcast as, because what the audio we record, the videos we produce, who came on the show, who sponsors the show, is all public data.
Completely agree,
right?
Yeah, that's good.
But the webcast data is the data that we control access to, and we only, people internally and applications, to Gabe's point, only certain roles should have access to that. Then we only share that with specific companies that we've told our audience, like, and this has worked this way since the beginning of time, everyone. This isn't anything new. You register for a webcast. They tell you your information is going to be shared with the sponsor, and they may contact you.
Yeah, that's kind of...
And so we want to control all of that, and I think that's where Sperion comes in being able to help companies, for us, on a very small scale with one application example.
Here's what happens, and often happens on many different scales. That information, lives in whatever that central source record is, but someone else might download, export it to a CSV, a spreadsheet, whatever, so they can look at it. They can analyze it.
Isn't that why we have DLP? Oh, no, wait.
How's that worked out for us, though? That hasn't really.
It never reports that anyone's stealing any data, so we're good, right?
Or it reports that someone did. It's like, oh, thank you.
Right.
I appreciate that. It's like data exfiltration. It's like,
it already happened.
I want you to not let the data.
So we were talking, you can control who can export or prevent the exportation of that data?
No, what I was getting at is, because, for example, I do have I have a customer who has this problem in particular, same one you just mentioned, at scale. So they have systems where there's a bunch of information, and they have a bunch of people that, for different reasons, access that data. And sometimes they only need data out of a few rows of those, sometimes more. But they download the whole thing. They just download the whole thing, and they do whatever work they have to do on it. They analyze it. They might throw it in Tableau. They do a bunch of different stuff. And so now it's also on those machines, and then they'll store them on another server or something, and sometimes
it's uploaded to a SaaS provider.
Oftentimes so that they can collaborate with other.
Oh,
they're on your Mac. They'll put it up in the cloud somewhere so they can collaborate with other employees, etc. And now that data, you've got 2 more copies of that data,
right?
And then that other person who's collaborating on that same document grabs a local copy as well too, oftentimes, and
or you share it with somebody in your
and then when you're all done,
Google
it ends
account.
up it ends up in a PowerPoint, and it's all nice and pretty. It's like, here's the numbers for whatever. It's like, now there's yet another version of it. My personal favorite is embedding some nice fancy graphs inside of PowerPoint that are being powered from the spreadsheets underneath. So now the spreadsheet's embedded inside of there. The data is literally everywhere, and a lot of these folks are talking. It's like, no, I know where the data is. Just it's right here. It's in this database.
Right.
That's where it is.
No.
It's like, I mean, you're right. It's
it
there.
Is. It's there.
But it's also
everywhere else.
And so how do we solve that problem, Gabe?
In the short answer is, you can't just look for it the one side of it, right? Like,
Discovery and classification needs some more encompassing, going, hey, it's in that database over there.
Yeah, it needs to be a continuous practice. It needs to be a discipline that the organization has. It's not just we perform discovery and we classified everything, because data doesn't work that way. It is continuously being added to the environment, continuously being moved. All of those things happen. But you need to be able to do those things so that you can then, to answer your question, what do you do about it? You have to be able to apply all of those other controls, because discovery classification is by no means where it ends. But that information should be informing what controls you do apply to it, right? So again, let's take the same information. Let's take PII. You might have multiple uses for that PII, right? So you use some of it to tell me when the next webcast is coming up. Use some of it to market to me, etc. Right? You may also use some of it, and not that you do, but you may use some of it. You share it with a third party for whatever number of reasons, so they can perform analytics and tell you when's the best time to host your show, when the most listeners tune in, all of those things. Like, that's how a lot of data these days is being used and analyzed, even by small mom and pop shops. I talk about the little ice cream shop near me all the time, so maybe I won't tell the story again, maybe I will, whatever. But what's the right control to add? It's the same data, but different processing purposes. So, I've seen now where, my customers are equally maturing their own classification programs from simply labeling things as this is PII, this is PCI, PHI, etc., to their handling purposes, like this is marketing data. Right? This is customer data. I use this to fulfill orders, right? I use this to share with third parties. This is research data. So classifying it based on purpose is equally as important. And then, being able to understand whose data that is, because you may just have a credit card number, you may just have a passport number, whatever those things are. But being able to perform some type of identity association against that information, so I know that all of that is Paul's data. So I can respond to any request Paul has for me to tell him, yes, Paul, I have your marketing data. Oh, I understand, Paul. You no longer want me to share that with third parties? Got it. You have to be able to have that level of control over it. So the landscape has changed from just, cool, just go encrypt the database, and it's magically protected. And even
then, do you create specific rules then around the different classifications to really enforce how that data can move or be shared or et cetera?
Yeah. So we specifically do. Yeah. So we've got workflows that will take actions based on those classifications. Right. So you can say, no, PCI data should never ever live on Paul's machine, because it shouldn't. Right. And so if it's found there, you can automatically quarantine it, delete it, shred it, whatever the case is. So that's just one type of control, right? So there's any number of controls.
But understanding all those associations is probably one of the biggest challenges in organizations. Just being able to identify, understand the associations, and have the right classifications applied is not. I mean,
no,
we
you're
just
right.
said it, but it's not that easy to do.
No, so big. In fact, it is literally only this week that I announced the availability of the identity association solution that allows us to do that. And it was a lot of work that went into being able to create those associations, based on knowing and understanding the data itself and what the relationships between that person and the data is. By no means of the imagination was it an easy problem to solve. And I'm not one of those big believers in technology is, an answer to every problem. I don't think you can actually solve this problem in particular without technology. I don't know how you...
Yeah, you would have to deploy an army of people to go figure this out.
Right, exactly. So, but we actually just announced that at the show this week too. So, it's pretty neat. Yeah.
I was in Amazon's RDS, and encryption is a checkbox, and like literally a literal checkbox, a literal checkbox, and I can see people making the false assumption that my data is secure because when I set it up in Amazon's RDS, I checked the box that said encryption. Encryption means security. This is good, but I check that box and I'm like, but my web application needs to get it out of the database and then it's decrypted.
Yeah,
and then I know I have. Not for webcast data, but for other category and tag data as an example. I'm like, I know I have stuff in there that lets people, literally download it as a CSV file. I'm like, it's not encrypted at that point.
Nope.
Either. And then they put it on Google Drive or the email, like we're saying, and on a thumb. And I'm like, yeah, this is a hard problem to solve.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't understand, if you have that false sense of security that click, I'm secure.
And as you said, just because it's secure doesn't mean it's private.
That's right. Doesn't mean the privacy has been protected. That might mean that the data was protected. Yeah. And if we define it explicitly, because I think it was 2 weeks or so ago, the NIST privacy framework was just published, right? So if you define it explicitly, they show a Venn diagram of two things. On the left side, you've got data security, right? Which the risks there are associated with unauthorized access to data, versus data privacy, where the risks there are a byproduct of authorized access to data, which is what you just articulated. Like, here are the things that are authorized to do it, and that's where your privacy risk comes in. Because sure, it was safe, but what am I protecting there? How am I protecting that information from being used or processed in ways that will otherwise, expose?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we can encrypt it at rest in other places. Does Spirion help with that? Because one of the things I was thinking about was, yes, if I have this data, it should be encrypted. Maybe the database is encrypted, but when I export it, it gets encrypted. But I only give the keys to certain people who should have access to it, right?
Yeah.
That's a thing in your product, right?
That's a thing. So explicitly, there's integrations for those things, right? So we hand off encryption by and large to actual encryption products, because that's a hard problem to solve on its own.
Love it.
Right. But
good choice.
Yeah, for sure. But if you think about like the integration we have with AIP, if you're using their encryption, so you can call the AIP encryption based on the classification of something that our solution found. So we'll automatically go call AIP and say, go encrypt that. And for anything that is encrypted there, if you wanted to, you can use the solution to make sure that whatever is inside the encrypted, et cetera, is classified as well too. So to your point about handing keys off, et cetera, all of those things are broken there using that AIP SDK to make it happen. So
right. Interesting. And you can enforce the lifetime of the data, right? Because in our webcast example, like at some point, our collection for a certain activity, collecting that data stops.
Needs to end.
And the kind of last handoff to where it needs to be shared happens. And there's this point in time that without a lot of manual work, or I'd prefer it to be automated, right? But I prefer it to be automated to go, I don't need that data anymore.
Yeah.
It's gone. Get rid of it. It may be encrypt. I don't know. I would prefer that it's just gone.
It is an extremely common use case, and the short answer is yes. So, I can go out and I can tell you where there's, redundant and obsolete and trivial data, right? So things that have not been accessed in 5 years, but is sensitive. Like you probably should, put some additional controls in those things, as well as enforce.
Or get rid of it.
Clearly, you don't need it. It's not being used. And or enforce, those retention policies. So, data of XYZ classification, ages to here, then quarantine it, delete it.
Retention policy. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yes.
Data retention.
Enforcing those things. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Love it.
Good show.
Great show. I love hanging out with you guys. I would come up to the studios, but it's a little cold in the Northeast right now.
Yeah, wait till it warms up.
I will wait till it warms up. Then I will. Yes. Then I will
come out in the summer.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Spring's beautiful too. Yeah. Fall is the best though. You guys have the best falls. Yes. No two ways about it.
Yeah. So you mentioned one product announcement. There are other things that are happening at Spirion.
There were actually two product announcements this week.
Yeah.
Right? So one of those was publicly announced, which is a cloud product quite similar to what we do today. It has a number of new capabilities that really extends the overall scale and speed of it. And the other one was the compliance product too. So the compliance product helps organizations respond to CCPA requests, so SRRs, subject rights requests, DSARs, those types of things. So
do you have a similar capability for GDPR as well?
Yeah, in fact,
this was just CCPA.
No. In fact, similar capabilities for a number of different privacy regulations. I think some people also forget, like HIPAA was a privacy regulation, right? Yeah, it's very much focused on privacy, right? And one of the P's in portability. So there are a number of different regulations that the compliance product does help organizations with. So,
got it.
Yeah, it's been a busy, exciting week with those two announcements. Definitely, I think we put out some press releases for anyone who want to go dig into the details, and there should be some stuff up on the website at Spirion.com. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
So cloud gives me the ability to go discover all my data in the cloud,
like
in RDS and S3 and all that other
Actually,
stuff.
I was going to ask that too.
It's a bit of both. The first is that because we've always been able to discover data in the cloud, even with the existing solution. This is a SaaS-based product that also does have the capabilities of reaching into large data stores like S3.
Okay.
Yes. So,
good.
Yeah,
because that's a big problem.
It is a massive problem. There's a lot of data just hanging out in those environments.
Yeah, we got a lot of misconfigured S3 buckets.
A lot of misconfigured S3 buckets just sitting around. And
fortunately, Amazon's made it really easy to understand how to encrypt and protect data and apply AMI roles and access policy. No, maybe they haven't made that easy.
They need that checkbox.
Yes. Click, done.
Where's my checkbox?
Yeah. Yes. The problem is if you're in their interface, there's like a million checkboxes, right? Or there's thousands of lines of JSON code and CLI commands.
Or maybe they need a checkbox for don't disclose or expose my S3 bucket.
I mean, but here's the challenge to that, too. One would think it was as simple as maybe an administrator just did that. But oftentimes it's probably not. I mean, we've got a lot
developers now. Developers are spinning up a lot of this infrastructure.
Infrastructure as code, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's a very challenging problem. We talk about this a lot, especially on Application Security Weekly. But, as more and more stuff is configured as code,
yes,
how do you validate the misconfigurations before you spin the infrastructure up?
Yeah.
And find that.
Yeah.
Because as soon as it's out there, I mean, literally, people are scanning those environments instantly as soon as they see them up.
1,000%.
Yes.
For sure.
It just lets you make mistakes faster and a more grander scale.
Yes.
Right.
Scary thought, but it's true. Yeah. The infrastructure as code is the thing. That's to the point I was making before. You have so many other things that have access to data.
Yeah.
You've got serverless code that has access to those same S3 buckets.
Yes.
You've got containers that have access to those S3 buckets. A number of things have access to those buckets, and without that workload context, right? The context being, what is the data that's inside of there? What control do you put on those things?
Well, I mean, we have AMI roles and access policies, and we're all straightforward, right?
Yeah,
especially as
that's it. I'm going to come up with a new security product, and it's just going to have one checkbox. Like you can load the window.
Secure.
And it's just one big checkbox. That's it. It's it. It's a checkbox. It goes from red to green. You will never have felt so good.
You can find that at checkboxsecurity.com.
Wait, hold on. I got to go register it. Hold on.
Gabe's new company, new startup.
That's it.
You'll have $10 million Series A. It's going to be awesome.
I mean, why not? How would that be strange?
We might have seen a couple of those announcements this week.
Right. Getting 36X for that checkbox.
I do want to mention the landing page for Spirion, securityweekly.com/Spirion. Takes you to the Spirion website where you can register for. You have a trial version that people can register for and check out. And do you have questionnaires and other content like that?
There's a bunch of other content up there also.
Like a self-assessment questionnaire is what I was asking.
There is a self-assessment questionnaire up there right now that will help folks understand their data privacy posture. So that is there. It actually was developed by some of the analysts over at Forrester too. So some really good work and research put into that. The Try Now, we're actually updating that to make it quite a bit more immersive. But don't be afraid to pop in there for what's there now. We've got another experience in the back end that's coming real shortly, but I think we can expose some of that, especially for your listeners. I'd be happy to make that a thing. Anyone reaches out to us on that landing page and mentions Security Weekly, and I will personally make sure that thing happens.
That's great. securityweekly.com/Spirion.
And by personally, I mean someone else will. But I will personally make sure that someone
else
does
it. I will personally task someone else with getting it done.
I mean, but it will get done. Though,
so. Chief Innovation Officer. He's got to innovate. Come on.
He innovates. Because we got his title wrong when we started because I read from the wrong website, the wrong page.
It's all good, man.
Awesome.
Good
Gabe, thank you so much
for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, enjoy the rest of the show. Hopefully there's not much left, and safe travels back east.
35 minutes, baby.
That's it. Counting down.
We're going to take a short break, come back, and talk about some of the cool things we saw here at RSA that were security-related anyhow, so stay tuned.